Well, we begin with absurdity. The left's immediate and fierce defense of Stacey Abrams, in defiance of the science, I'll have you know, after her controversial claims about ultrasound machines when it comes to detecting a fetal heartbeat.
There is no such thing as a heartbeat at 6 weeks. It is a manufactured sound designed to convince people that men have the right to take control of a woman's body.
And in response to Abrams' stunning ascientific comments, the left rushed to her defense, of course, because why wouldn't they? The Washington Post fact checker Glenn Kessler tweeting this: "For what it's worth, fetal heartbeat is a misnomer. The ultrasound picks up electrical activity generated by an embryo. The so-called heartbeat sound you hear is created by the ultrasound. Not until 10 weeks can the opening and closing of a cardiac valve be detected by a Doppler machine." And wouldn't you know, Planned Parenthood, well, they redefined how they see it too. As recently as July, here's what the abortion provider said on their website about fetal development between 5 and 6 weeks. Quote, "A very basic beating heart and circulatory system develop." Well, now it reads this: a part of the embryo starts to show cardiac activity. It sounds like a heartbeat on an ultrasound, but it's not a fully formed heart. It's the earliest stage of the heart developing. Fox News has reached out to Planned Parenthood for clarification on exactly when the language was changed. We are still waiting a response, wouldn't you know? Emily, we live in very scary times where there is no truth, where you can't say pregnant women anymore because apparently that's discriminatory, where your child no longer has a gender as a toddler, a little girl can be a male, where now cardiac activity, heartbeats, we're challenging that in young babies. It's a very scary time when truth is out the window. Things you said a year ago are now all of a sudden bigoted.
That's right. And the only thing more frightening to me than someone saying this on a national platform is the media and the liberal machine amplifying it, somehow carrying that ball further. I don't know where it's going to end. And let's go back to the law for a second, which is rooted in fact and actual scientific data. So they're in Georgia, where Stacey Abrams purports to represent those 50 million people. At any stage of the growth process, the death of an unborn child is A, referred to as an unborn child, and B, prosecuted as a homicide. How is that okay then for her to say that at 6 weeks there's not even a heartbeat, when for the preceding 6 weeks it would be considered the death of a human? And then let's take America's favorite governor, Governor Gavin Newsom, who has used taxpayer dollars to have a billboard campaign throughout the entire country. He's quoting Bible verses, Mark 12:31, to say, this is why you should get an abortion, essentially. You need one? California is ready to help, he says. He has used California taxpayer dollars to put this in Republican gubernatorial-led states. And yet in his state, as of 7 weeks, feticide is a criminal charge. And there in the criminal code, it is referred to as child destruction and fetal homicide. So apparently at 6 weeks, it sells. At 7 weeks, it's a child, it's a human, it's a fetus. It's murder. There is absolutely no sense to any of this.
Love to discuss the Bible with Gavin Newsom. Before I formed you in the womb, I knew you. I could go verse for verse with him. That'd be great.
That's right.
Anyway, Dr. Neshwa, the science. We put it on the wall because these are all respected institutions, presumably by the left too, at least as of yesterday they were. National Library of Medicine, the baby's brain, spinal cord, and heartbeat begin to develop by week 6. It's a heart that continues to grow. March of Dimes, the baby's heart and lungs are developing. The baby's heart starts to beat. That's at 5 weeks. UK's National Health Service, the heart is forming as a simple tube-like structure in the 5th week. Mayo Clinic, a baby's cardiovascular system begins developing at 5 weeks. The heart starts to beat shortly afterward. So all these institutions that the left loves, that Fauci allegedly, I would assume, bows down to, we no longer take them as credible because Stacey Abrams, a lunatic Democrat candidate, said something crazy.
Yeah, you know, that is what we call disinformation. I'm a primary care doctor. I have delivered quite a few babies, and I have taken care of lots of pregnant women. I even worked in a specific OB/ER where all we did was use fetal heart monitoring and ultrasounds all day long to take care of all these pregnant moms, these pregnant women. And I can tell you, by about 5 weeks and 5 days, you can hear a fetal heart tone. I've done it myself. I've actually done the ultrasounds myself. And what's disheartening is when we have all this this information that's put out there that's inaccurate. It's misleading and it can be harmful to patients. And it's important to understand an ultrasound is used to detect motion. It is not used to detect life. It is not used to hear. You can detect life with it if you see movement, if you see the heart contracting, that is indicative of life. But you don't need sound to say there is life. If you see the heart contracting on the monitor, that's viability. And that's what we need to keep in mind moving forward.
That's a great point. Guy, troubling in all of this, I think, is the way institutions just kind of change things. I mean, Planned Parenthood, apparently they changed their language back in August. We're still awaiting an actual date on that. But Twitter, too, in their trends section, they said, for the sake, this is your tweet, I'll get to that in a second, but GA gubernatorial candidate Stacey Abrams said there's no such thing as a fetal heartbeat at 6 weeks. This is Twitter. Doctors agree one doesn't exist, and reports from NBC and NPR confirm. That's when they describe why something is trending. So seems like more of a defense than an agnostic description of what happened.
Of course, and my timeline was filling up with doctors disagreeing, but the official word down from Silicon Valley and big tech was doctors agree, and here are some reports that confirm. I saw some fact checkers and other people saying, let's get very technical. Is it a heartbeat or is it cardiac activity? Okay, interesting distinction perhaps. What would you do if someone told you that your cardiac activity was about to cease in a few minutes? Would that be alarming to you for some reason? I think it might. So we can get into the rhetoric and certain words. I think it's important to get to the actual crux of the issue here, because if they say, well, it's really 10 weeks, not 6 weeks, fine, let's have that debate. If at 10 weeks you have fingerprints on a baby starting to form, unique fingerprints, and a distinct individual heartbeat, is that a separate human life worthy of protection or not? That is what this debate actually is about. And I think some people are engaging in this sort of dehumanizing language, because they're afraid to really have that discussion, because their talking points might seem insufficient, because they are.
That's a really fantastic point. If your cardiac activity is going to cease to exist, I think most people would be alarmed regarding nomenclature. Kat, I just wonder, so Stacey Abrams, is now she the one we look to for science? I mean, this is the person who surrounded herself with children wearing masks, as you can see, when she didn't have one on. And now, I guess, I know Fauci's retiring. Maybe it's Stacey next?
If you view it from a political perspective, why would she have chosen to talk about 6 weeks specifically? You think about the fetal heartbeat bill or law in Georgia, not bill, law, that, places that limit at 6 weeks. If she were elected, she would be very limited in terms of what she could do realistically to overturn that. But I think that talking about it in this way, she's seeking to sort of challenge the logic behind it and communicate to voters who are pro-choice, who are concerned about this, that she's sort of thinking about it and vote for me and maybe I can do something. So politically, Guy, when you said, why not? Okay, if it's 10 weeks, let's talk about 10 weeks. I think that's why she tried to say something at 6 weeks specifically, because that's what matches up with that law in Georgia.
Hey, Guy, you had a fantastic thread on this yesterday, and I asked our team to pull part of it because I think this is a smart point. And you said this, for the sake of argument, let's accept that parsing for a moment. Can we, the parsing by the left, I should say, can we then agree that there's a separate human heartbeat at 10 weeks, and this is that it's ethical and acceptable to restrict most elective abortions at that point? No. How about 20 weeks? Still no. So your point being, okay, we'll take you at the heartbeat. At what point is the restriction, I guess, acceptable?
Right, and the answer, unfortunately, among a lot of people now, and I think there's a difference between pro-choice, and I think people of good faith can disagree. It's a tough issue. There's also pro-abortion, where it crosses a line into something much more ghoulish and ghastly, in my opinion, and a lot of elected Democrats these days, unfortunately, are in that camp, including Stacey Abrams. We're quibbling about 6 weeks versus 10 weeks, potentially. Would she accept a single restriction on any abortion ever all the way up through birth? And the answer is no. And that's the position that she and others should be forced to defend, because very, very few Americans agree with them on that.
Yeah, 80% want restrictions in the third trimester, but Stacey Abrams wants no restrictions. So go look it up. Atlanta Journal-Constitution. She told them that.
Hey everyone, I'm Emily Campagno. Catch me and my co-hosts Harris Faulkner and Kaylee McEnany on Outnumbered every weekday at 12 p.m. Eastern, or set your DVR. Also, don't forget to subscribe to the Fox News YouTube page for daily highlights.